referrals and reports. Item number 1, Sandown Racetrack, and we have had a update, just this turn to staff first, if I may, for an overview and update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Council will recall, at the last Committee of the Whole, there was a good deal of discussion about the Sandown proposal. A lot of questions, some concerns expressed, and ultimately no decision at the time. And Council will recall that there is a time limit from the point of view of the owners for addressing this. So rather than waiting for Council direction, we undertook to address as many of the concerns and questions and comments as possible. And I'd like to thank a few councillors for dropping off a number of questions that we tried to address in this report as well. That was dropped off on Tuesday, last Tuesday. This report includes an update to the financial analysis of the acquisition of the property. In particular, it costs puts numbers to the conditions from the Land Commission. Staff have proposed an amendment to the terms of the covenant that had been proposed originally, and I appreciate that this may cause some concern for some folks, but basically the proposal is the request from the Commission was to have a covenant that had them as a party, and they clarified that. And that covenant would say no agricultural only and no park use. The Commission staff, through these 2 executive directors, have advised that from their point of view, and while this would be subject to approval of the Commission, from their point of view, they would support 2 separate covenants breaking out the agricultural and the park use. The agricultural covenant would be held only by the district, and the no park covenant would be held by the Commission. And when I say held by, that means that they're the ones that are a party to the covenant, and they get to enforce the covenant. So in terms of agriculture only, it would be the district that would be basically enforcing no agriculture. It was staff's intent, it was our intent initially that this deal would be securing the 83 acres for agricultural land in perpetuity, and we use those terms. And that's being interpreted to mean that in perpetuity would go on into the terms of the covenant. We're clarifying that that would not be the case. In effect, putting such language into a covenant would be of no effect, because the parties on the covenant would simply have to discharge the covenant, and the in perpetuity clause would disappear along with it. It was initially contemplated that the agricultural-only covenant would have a third party, that would be the Commission. From the Land Commission's point of view, they are already in effect in a third party because it's all in the land reserve now. So that's a redundancy that they're prepared to let go. In terms of the financials, we have had an opportunity since their decision is coming now to put some numbers to what their conditions are. And these have been prepared by staff, and I'd say they're informed numbers. We had initially an estimate, so I'll go through all the numbers for you and try to identify the differences. We had an estimate on demolition from a contractor, and they identified that this would be about $395,000, and there's qualifications that are identified in the report. The owner subsequently said that he would donate $100,000 towards that cost for us to use. So that would mean a net of $295,000. And we may find cheaper ways of dealing with that demolition, and we may not need to demolish all the buildings. That number is for all the buildings on the site. $9,000 plus some additional legal work in terms of finishing the development agreements and finishing the zoning. We put a number of about $20,000 to that. In terms of the soil improvements, now most of the cost, most of the real cost of that is being donated by the Victoria Airport Authority, because they have agreed to provide topsoil from their lands, tested to make sure that it's free of contaminants, delivered to the property. Notwithstanding that, there will still be a cost to spreading the soil around, and including a fairly healthy contingency. The number that we have for that is $188,000. Drainage, our engineer has estimated that to be $100,000. We have a fee-for-service proposal from an hydrologist to do all of the things that the commission has asked for. That's $27,000. Water, we have nothing here for water. There is 6-inch service adjacent to the property. We do not feel that it is necessary to do anything more with water in terms of satisfying the Land Commission's requirements. If council leases, there's a number of different possible future business cases for how the land is used, from selling it all to a farmer or leasing it out long-term. The cost of actually putting water through the property, I would say, could and should be deferred to the ultimate user of the property. And then there's some fencing, and the fencing and signage, that would be basically along the road frontage in order to ensure that people don't go in and dump materials onto the property. And that's the only fencing that we're proposing. There is other fencing and buffering that the commission wants, but that's fencing and buffering that the developer would have to put in as a part of their own development, basically as a buffer between the development and agricultural land. We got some clarification from the Land Commission on a few items, for example, trails. Now, trails are not an outright use, but in accordance with the letter that they sent us, they see the value of trails, and we could apply to have trails, and they approve trails, provided that they don't conflict with the farm operations. It's also understanding that the Commission is just fine with leaving wooded areas, and the wooded area that is on the property, we would contemplate staying there as a part of the environmental function within that property. At the end of the day, in terms of the financial analysis, the net asset value using the last year's assessment would have a net value of a little over $5 million. This year's assessment, the assessments have come down a little bit, like most of the properties in North Saanich, and so it's about $5 million in terms of the net asset value. That's not including any of the increased property taxes. And increased property taxes would occur in the year following the completion of the zoning, and so that would occur immediately in the year following for the land, and then as the properties develop. And of course, we do not know how quickly the land will develop. As the land develops, so do the assessments, and we would see, upon build-out, we're estimating somewhere in the high 300,000s for increase in property taxes. I'd be happy to take any questions that council might have.
Council? Councilor Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Buchan. Well, it's fresh on my mind. If I could ask you a question about the covenant. You were saying, and you mentioned like this email that we received that was on the council table tonight, talks about us holding the covenant. So what I don't understand, I wonder if you could explain to me. You mentioned that the parties on the covenant. So we don't. Do we have a? This isn't a covenant we have with ourselves. Is it? Would this still be a covenant we have with another party? You mentioned the party. So if you could maybe explain that, and I may have a supplementary question, Madam Chair, after that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, through Councilor Daly, if we're talking about the agricultural covenant, that would be a covenant that we would register on the title of the property. So as long as we own the property, it's a covenant with ourselves. Should we sell the property, the covenant stays with the property.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That answers it. So it's a covenant with ourselves.
That's correct.
Councillor Mearns?
Yeah. When we've been discussing this thing and talking to people about it, one of the questions that keeps coming up is the timing of this thing, because in a lot of the things from the ALR, they're talking about you have to complete all these conditions, and at the end of that period, then they will release the land. Now, that's where we've had a number of disagreements amongst different people, and I don't know whether that's true, because if that was true, it could be 5 years down the road before the land was released for the developer to do anything with it.
Mr. Becker?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through Councilor Mearns. This is an important point, and I did try at the last meeting to explain it. I appreciate that it's not always easy reading those decisions from the Commission or from other government bodies for that matter. The 5 years refers to the time that the conditions have to be met. They've given a 5-year window to do that. The conditions do not include having to complete the works and services. They want an agreement. They want an agrologist plan, showing the improvements, and they want the memorandum of understanding. Now, the memorandum of understanding is in lieu of bonding, so that's a great deal of flexibility that they've given us. They would prefer to have bonding, but memorandum of understanding is basically, and not even as much as a handshake. It's not legally binding. It's our statement of intent to try to do this. So it is a great deal of flexibility and trust that they're giving the district to undertake those works. So we need the agrologist plan. We need to have the agreement in place, and a couple of other minor things. But in terms of the drainage and the soil, that they would like to see something occurring within the 5 years, but it is not a requirement to have it completed within the 5 years.
So that would mean that then we would be, our increased revenue stream would start, you're thinking maybe in a year's time or something like that. Is that right? From the industrial commercial land.
Madam Chair, I think that the increased revenues would start, there's a few different sources. There is a cell tower lease. We would be taking over those payments right away. If Great Canadian extends its lease, and they have 2 one-year options to do that, we would be those payments over as they occur. If council decides to proceed with this application and complete the zoning this year, and this year I mean more like mid-year rather than December, we would be seeing an increase in property taxes for next year. And the assessment authority have to do their appraisals and their assessments. Based on what we think the range of uses that could go in there, we are estimating, and really this is a rough estimate, somewhere upwards of $100,000 as land assessment on the 12 acres. Sorry, $100,000 increase in taxes on the property, and that's compared to $22,000 currently that we're getting. So it's a good deal more that we'd be getting, and frankly a good deal more than a residential option for the property. And we've laid that out in terms of the owner's plan B.
What do you think the likelihood of Great Canadian continuing on leasing? I don't think they're using that property anymore, are they?
Mr. Becker?
I wouldn't gamble to give you an answer on that. I have no idea.
Any other members of council?
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Buchan. I just want to go back to the subsidiary question from Councillor Daly. What you're saying is we will have a covenant binding us to keep the land that we belong in the agricultural sphere, despite the fact that it's in the ALR in any case. It doesn't come out of the ALR, does it? No.
Madam Chair, I'll try to expand a bit on what I said. There is a level of protection on the land regarding agriculture as it stands now. It's in the land reserve. We had proposed to add another level of protection, and that was the covenant, with the third party being the land commission. And we did that because the proposal to put in 12 acres to compensate for the 12 acres coming out was on the face of it not an equal trade, because the 12 acres going in is not as good as the 12 acres coming out. So there needed to be, in our view, a way of making this approvable in the eyes of the land commission. And frankly, it was our intent to have a strong statement of intent that the 83 acres remains agriculture. So it was that statement of intent that really, I think, best describes the covenant. If the covenant is just in council's hands, council would need to be through public hearing, because this is being considered through a rezoning process. Council would have the capacity to discharge the covenant in the future, whether that's in 5 years or 20 or 30 years, for whatever reasons it wants. If you consider that and discharge it. And that's a good deal easier if there's no third party. So the commission has said, we'll accept, the commission's executive directors have said we'll support that. And they're doing that because, in effect, there's already a third party role. Arguably even more effective than a covenant, in that the property is all in the land reserve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a subsidiary to that was my objection to it in the first place, that I didn't think we needed somebody looking after us to see whether any council in the future, 10 or 15 years' time, decides to do different things with it, the marketplace in there for farming or whatever it is that they wanted to do. I didn't see why we had to go back. If we want to take it out of agriculture, we'd have to go back in any case. So my question is, why put the covenant on in the first place? It's in the ALR. And if they're going to have a covenant about the trails, I guess that's the other part of it, right? That was the second part.
It's about parkland, not trails.
About parkland, okay. So we can't use it as parkland at all, unless we have their permission. But we can't use it as parkland at all unless we go to them in any case for the ALR. Isn't that correct? So why do we have to have these covenants? I don't like the idea of covenants because it binds future people to doing what the covenant says forever. So how about we go back and tell them we don't want any covenants? What do you think they'll say to that? I mean, the two executives commenting on it.
Mr. Buchan?
Madam Chair, through Councilor Brown, I don't think they will be successful. I don't believe that they would give up on both of those. I think the parkland is something that it wasn't a discussion that we had prior to them having that decision, but I understand the reason for it. They don't want to see land set aside only to be used as parkland. That's not their mandate. Their mandate is to have agriculture. So it's an added statement of intent from their part that this is agriculture, folks, and that's what you're doing it for. We're going to hold you to it. So, we could say no to it and end up with no deal at all.
Councillor Brown?
Madam Chair, yeah, that's the extremes. When you're negotiating, it's give and take. So I guess we're still in the negotiation stage. But I mean, I could live with the second covenant. I don't see why we need the first covenant. And maybe that's where we end up. If they're saying it's our covenant and we say we don't want it, I guess that's easier to convince them. If they're saying you have to have a covenant in favor of yourselves and one in favor of us about the parklands. If we say, well, we don't want one in favor of ourselves, you take yours in favor of the parklands, would that be a reasonable settlement?
Mr. Buckley?
Madam Chair, it's difficult for me to say if that would be accepted from that. I think that in terms of the pair of covenants, the park covenant may be the most important to them. So council could take that position and see what happens with it. At the end of the day, my question to you is, if they're giving you the capacity in the future to discharge it, why would you draw a line in the sand over that if you don't like it in the future and can discharge it? It doesn't seem to be I guess something to die on at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley.
And if I could just get a final
Councillor Brown.
resolution to that, I can live with a covenant in our favour because it's going to bind councils in the future. In 15 years' time, I don't anticipate being here. So I'm quite comfortable with that covenant. I have one or two other questions, but I'll let the other councillors.
I don't have anyone else on my, oh, sorry, Councillor McBride.
Madam Chair, this is for Mr. Buchan, and I have another question as well for someone else. Mr. Randall said the last time he was in that a Great Canadian had already told him that they were dropping the lease on the property this year, that they were not planning to renew it. Did we get confirmation of that, and what month are they going to be? Because that's a lot of our budget, $100,000, and we would only then have $46,000 to do a lot of the work that needs doing. So, it's a really important issue that we know what month they're going to stop.
Mr. Buckley?
I do not have that information at all.
Madam Chair,
Councillor McBride?
I have another question, and this one is for Patrick O'Reilly, about the ponds, the drainage. If the ponds don't work, we're going to use ponding to deal with the drainage problem. If those pondings don't work and we still have a drainage problem, how expensive would that be to remedy that situation?
Mr. O'Reilly?
Through the chair, I'd like to start by saying that there's certain requirements here for the ALC, Agricultural Land Commission, require drainage on site, and they require agricultural drainage, which will involve drain tile, agricultural drain tile, and then maybe some ditches to collect it and put it into some ponds. As noted in the report, that I estimate to be about $100,000. And when you say drainage problem, I think there has been some reference to the fact that in those catchment areas and to the west, in the Seacombe and to the east in the McDonald, there are some existing drainage issues that I feel that the district will ultimately probably have to expend monies to deal with. But I look on them as being independent of this project and this application. Those needs for the district to deal with any drainage problems that are pre-existing, I think we have that obligation anyway. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Councillor Daniel and Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Buchan. Back to the covenant, and then I've got another question, but again, it's still freshly in discussion. I just want to get my head around this. You mentioned in response to Councillor Brown's question that we're in a better position not having a third-party status on it, that being ALC. So am I to understand that the two parties then that you're referring to are the District of North Saanich and the District of North Saanich.
Mr. Buchan?
That's correct. The covenantor is the District of North Saanich, and the covenantee is the District of North Saanich as owner. If the property is sold, the covenantee becomes a different owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other question is on page 17 of the report, at least 17, the number stand from the bottom right-hand corner. And so I just want to understand what you've given us here as examples of assessments for farm acreage. So if I look at the first one, if I'm reading this correctly, I see we've got 9.19 acres, and the land is assessed at, the farm status is 11,547. Before I go on, can I confirm that I'm reading that correctly?
Mr. Buchan?
I would like to defer that question to our Director of Financial Services, please.
Through the chair, for the first folio there's 9.19 acres and it's farm status. Residential, some of the land is in class 1, most of the land is farm. And so we've broken it down. There's improvements on there. There would be land where those improvements are on and they were class 1. So most of the land is farm class. And so it reads, we've broken it down which class each property is in. So we have class 1, the categories are class 1 and class 9.
So through you, Madam Chair, then can I confirm, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. So that 9.19 acres in total, we don't know how much of that is residential, but the farm assessment on that is 11,547. And do we have any way of knowing by looking at this figure how many of those acres are farm versus how many are residential?
No, but when I didn't take out what portion of the property was farm, but the farm is not market value. So it could be most of those acreage are in farm. The assessment isn't market value as class 1 is. So class 1, even though the land is 94,000, that could be a smaller portion of that land than the farm is.
Okay.
But I don't have that data. You're correct. You can't see what part of it is class 9.
Well, maybe I'll ask through you, Madam Chair, maybe I could ask the question and that will help clarify where I'm going with this. We've been told, or the report indicates, and certainly the BC assessment, last year's assessment is 6 million something. I'm trying to understand, if I'm looking at these examples provided by staff, if in folio, the first folio, 9 acres is assessed at $11,000, and the second folio, 9.86 acres is assessed at $14,000. I'm trying to understand how the assessment, because I look at that and I do the math and I go, well, I just don't see how you can get 6.6 million or whatever it is. So I'm wondering if you could explain the difference to me and tell me how I'm perhaps misreading this.
Through the chair, these properties are properties throughout the district. These aren't Sandown properties. These are properties throughout the districts. We took examples of ones that were close to about 12 acres, the ones that we could find. So with Sandown, there is some different classifications. There's class 1, there's class 2, class 8, class 9, class 6. And so those totals for the assessed value would add up to that amount, that 6 million.
Again, and not to belabor this, Madam Chair, through you, but if I read this example that staff has given us, am I reading it correctly that in the first folio, 9.19 acres is assessed at the 94 plus, we'll take the whole total even, the 9.19 acres of land is assessed at $105,000.
Yes, that's correct.
So by simple math, the average is about $10,000 or $11,000 an acre. And if I look at the next one, 9.86, the total assessment there, because they show no land in residential, is 14,600. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Brown?
I'm having some difficulty with that figure too, but let me just go back to the numbers and ask our CAO. When we started off with this thing, we were looking at some 400,000. Now we're looking at some 700,000. If you put in your normal contingencies for various things that come up, is it fair to say that the thing would cost us about $1 million or less than $1 million? Is that a fair assumption? I know, well, I've been through these things before where you start and it goes a little bit, it goes a little bit. And understandably, because new things come up. You may not have to demolish that building, but you may find asbestos or whatever, and you've got to deal with it. Is it fair to say that this would cost us less than $1 million that would be the max?
Mr. Buchan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frankly, I think it would be fair to say that it would cost us a few $100,000 less than the 700 to over $1 million. You know, these are Class D estimates. There's going to be a range in there. Now, certainly there is contingency built into part of it, and you know, and with the biggest, probably the biggest, yes, but definitely the biggest cost here are the demolitions, and you know, hopefully they don't all have to be demolished, or we could find some cheaper ways of doing it. So it could come in less, or it could come in more, and that swing could be, you know, $300,000 easily on either side, I would say. So I certainly have no problem with that thought.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I prefer the less than the more, but and that's what I was thinking. My thinking as I'm looking through these numbers that we're looking at is about $1 million. Now, the other thing I'm looking at is that if you look at what's going to happen here is this land is now going to have all those classifications that our treasurer is talking about taken away, because it becomes agricultural, right? There'll be no ability to have shows there, there'll be no racetrack, there'll be none of that. So we're going to have 83 agricultural acres. That's correct, right? Plus the 12 we're putting in. Now, if you look around in the district and you look at agricultural land, the best I can find is, and that's for fully completely serviced agricultural land ready to go, right, is 30,000 an acre. If I take that and look at that at 83, I'm coming out in the $2 to $3 million range, and not the $6 million we've been talking about. Now, I understand where the original concept came from, because that's the way we worked it out. But isn't it fair to say that when we've done this, when we've arranged for this to be there, we will have an asset in the $2 to $3 million range more if you had to value it at that stage?
Mr. Buchan?
I think the point is good. I think that on a reassessment, they would take into consideration the limitations of use. It's also fair to say that if you were to go and try and buy it, they're going to sell it to you for market value. The asset, has a certain value. Putting restrictions on it will affect the value. So there's an acquisition cost, and then there's what happens with it after. And I think I understand Councilor Daly's point earlier. Certainly in terms of assessment, that's the land valuations and the assessment for farmland. I don't believe are market assessments. I think that's done for farm purposes. But it could well be that the value of the land after the fact is about $3 million. I think going back to earlier discussions at council, I made the point that we could be out considerably on the valuation or the cost, and you're still ahead probably a couple $1 million. This analysis is only 2 and a bit pages. If the distance between cost and value was a good deal closer, I would be recommending that we have hire somebody to pay a great deal, or hire somebody to do a much more thorough business case. But I think that based on what we understand the values to be and the cost, there is such a considerable gap or distance between what we're getting and what it's going to cost to get, that it appears to be a pretty good deal.
Just one further comment, if I may, Chair, that just arising out of what we've said. But see, my problem is we started at 6.5 million and 400,000. Now we're down to maybe 3 million and 1 million. Yes, there is a value there, and I appreciate that. And I want to say thank you to the staff, because I know you all worked very hard. We did raise a whole lot of questions with you. You've already been working with some of those, and a lot of that has been answered here. So I want to say thank you for your efforts to bring that forward to us, because these are the details that we've been seeking and we're now getting.
Thank you. Councillor Burns?
Yeah, I just want to kind of jump in on that as well. First of all, I understand what when we're looking at the numbers that they gave us from on this page 17, I understand that they are agricultural assessments. They're not market assessments at all. But having said that, somebody went and did a review for me, and I know personally, because I keep aware of all this stuff, there was a fair number of large pieces of property for sale on the peninsula. There's one classic one in Mount Newton Crossroad, which is right down here where the little school is. It's been for sale for about 3 to 4 years. They keep dropping the price. And it's down to a case where it's under 25,000 an acre, and we still can't sell it. So, and the beauty of that land, and all the other land that we're talking about competing against, is it's all developed. It's ready to go. If someone needs fencing, that's all it needs. And some of it doesn't need fencing. I know a piece over in Saanich that's 65 acres, and it's got everything on it. It's ready. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's drained. It's got a creek through it. It's got its own water supply. It's got everything, and it's all been tilled, and it's ready. And they can't sell it, and it's up for about $3 million, and they've got about $500,000 worth of buildings on it. So that tells you what the real value is. The other problem that we have is that I think we've been underestimating Mr. Randall's bump on the 12 acres, because I know, because I'm in that business over in the Lower Mainland, and I know what that property is worth. And I think this property is going to be, when it's zoned, it's going to be worth somewhere between $7 and $10 million, probably closer to 10, because there's not very much land like that available in the lower end of Vancouver Island. There's nothing on the peninsula with the exception of a little teeny bit in Keating. So you have to be aware that it's not as open a deal as maybe we first thought it was when we first got into it, because we're really getting a piece of land that's probably worth, I would say, closer to 2 rather than 3, and we're going to have to put $1 million into it to bump it up, to get it to use what we want to get it to. And also, when we do that, we can get that money from our new commercial industrial. It'll take us probably 4 or 5 years to get it, but we can do that. But that's the trade-off that we're looking at. So it's not quite as easy a clean a deal as people think it is.
Sorry, Councillor Brown.
I'm sorry to hog the floor, Madam Chairman. I do have one other question, and that is, and I found out where it is. It's to do with the agrologist report. And in there, under paragraph 3 on page 019 of the full report, it is said that you've indicated that most of the work for this project will be carried out by your own forces using municipal equipment wherever possible. What does that mean? I mean, how much are we going to put in there and have we counted for it?
Mr. Buchan?
I did have some discussions with the agrologist suggesting that we might do that as a way of having to reduce our expenditures, but that hasn't factored into, I don't think that's factored into the cost that the staff have put together. So does that make sense? With those other costs, we might actually have a smaller outlay if we're able to do some of this work ourselves. And in terms of, if I can just comment, Madam Chair, I think that the estimate for the value of the 12 acres that Councilor Burns has suggested, that's right in the ballpark of what I was thinking it would be. bearing in mind that he will have some costs, some servicing costs to bring sewer to the site and the road frontage costs and other costs that are associated with it. So there needed to be a distance between what the current assessment is from his point of view, and I concur with that, and what it's ultimately worth. So that's not a net 7 or 10,000.
No. What's it using? Okay, I don't have any other comments or questions from council. Perhaps we could turn this over to the public if there are any comments or questions from the public. Please come to the podium and identify yourself, your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Hilda Boye, 8545 Lehman Terrace, North Saanich. We residents are extremely concerned about shrinking farmland, especially in the southern part of Vancouver Island. According to one statistic, 85% of food is being shipped from outside of the island. What would happen in the time of a crisis, like earthquake or fuel shortage? We do need land more than anything else. And according to statistics, Canada, much of our best agricultural land has been permanently lost. Did I understand correctly that the term in perpetuity is being removed from the Sandown proposal? If that is the case, it was in the original version that we residents supported. This is what we want to see, and it should be included within. If this is being left out, we residents will feel betrayed. We only feel safe if this clause is being added again. A covenant is no guarantee, as history has proven many times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Saanich. I live at 1018 North Park Street, Victoria, and I rent farmland on Mountain. For 2 years, I've leased land and run a small farming business. However, my lease has been insecure. The land is too small and there's no room for me to grow and expand my business. This fall, we actually left because we couldn't justify spending more money on infrastructure and support on that land if we knew we couldn't stay. So now I have a fellowship at UVic where I can study the barriers to farming on the Peninsula, and the thing that comes up again and again is access to land. I know a number of young farmers who've left because we finished our training here, but we're unable to find secure long-term leases on properties we could grow into. We can't afford to buy here. I know the property you're speaking of on Mount Newton, and it's completely unrealistic for me to be able to invest in that kind of land, but it's something that you could do in this property here, and it would buy my future on this island farming. With this property, we have secure long-term leases potentially, we'd have community support, and we'd have buildings we could use, and it would give us a reason to stay. Langley and Richmond have provided areas like these, and they've attracted young farmers. You can afford to buy this property, and you can keep us here, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would, and I would love to be a part of it. Thank you.
Rebecca Vermeer, and I live at 8968 Navy Road, and I would like to address this question to the chair. And this is item on page number 8 of the staff report. And this concerns the estimate of $371,156 that would be realized in terms of municipal taxes from land values and municipal taxes from building values on the property that is being proposed to be provided and developed by the Mr. Randall. Now, my question here is that the $371,000 that would be realized from the development of the 12 acres to full capacity, 78,413 of that comes from the land value, that's of the 12 acres. And for the buildings of up to 209,102 square feet, that would be developed on that land, the municipal taxes that expected is 292,742. So a large proportion, that's almost 293,000, would be coming from the building value that would be completed after 5 years, hopefully, and the land value would only generate 78,413. My question is this total 371,156 that would come every year after all is completed, that is built out, is that unique only to this particular 12 acres? Or could the municipality realize the similar, for example, taxes from the building value if the same building, 292,742 square, 209,102 square feet, would be built on the airport land? Would the municipality receive an equivalent of 292,742 if the same development were to take place on airport lands?
Thank you. I'm not sure to Ms. Flynn or to Mr. Buchan. I'm not sure who wants to answer that one.
Through the chair,
Thank you.
if the buildings are assessed at the same value, it would produce the same taxes.
Okay, so therefore it is not unique to this particular 12 acres that Mr. Rundle would take out from the AR. Is that correct?
Ms. Flynn?
Yes, if we have improvements and the land is rezoned, we would get new taxes. For the airport, and if there was a lease and there was buildings on the airport property, we would get new taxes.
Of the same amount, I presume?
It would have to be assessed at the same value. We've got the new assessments would be at 29 million, and so if the assessment was the same amount, we.
Okay, now that's for the building value. What about the land value? Now, would the 12 acres, this estimate was estimated for 12 acres at $15 per foot and would only generate 78,413 for that 12 acres. Now, if the same development were to take place on the 12 acres of land on airport lands, would there be a higher revenue that would be taken, that the municipality would be receiving from the 12 acres on airport lands?
Ms. Flynn?
Through the chair, if the assessment's the same, then we'd get the same amount of tax fund. So if BC assessment does assess it, the land value the same amount, I don't know whether they would on lease land as opposed to road land.
Mr. Buchan?
It could be a good deal more in the airport, and this could be a good deal more as well. The point is that we picked a conservative per square foot value, and I think Councilor Burns will confirm that. I understand that commercial land will go to $25 a square foot or $30 a square foot. Then there's the lower end, more of the service commercial, like industrial land, which is going to be probably more down around $50 a square foot. We picked a conservative number, so we did not pad the numbers. That was our intent. This could be more, and it depends on the nature of the use that's ultimately built. The range of uses in the zoning bylaw go from service commercial right up to higher end retail.
So in summary then, is it correct, is my conclusion correct to say that if the proposed development will not take place on the Mr. Randall's property, and instead a developer would develop 12 acres worth of land at the airport for the same or similar commercial activity that Mr. Randall would develop in the future, that in fact we still would generate at least the $371,000 a year of revenue on airport lands. Am I correct?
Madam Chair, if it was
Yes,
council's wish to limit the amount of commercial development in that way, then it would be limited. But this would allow development there as well as development on the airport. It was in our intent with this proposal to restrict the amount of commercial land being developed in North Saanich.
Thank you. Ms. Premier, I just want to tell you that your time is just about up. I've been taking enough time while staff has been
Yes.
answering, just let you know if you're getting
Thank you.
close.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Bryan. I live at 1661 Earl Street. I grew up on,
Is that Victoria, Saanich, or Sandown?
that's Victoria. I lived at 10327 Rest Haven for 13 years, and then I moved to Brentwood Bay and lived there for 13 years. Now I'm 30, and for the last 6 years I've been traveling around working for different farmers and different organizations. And now I'm working on a business plan in order to create an edible nursery on 2 acres that will be comprehensive of the plants that grow in this climate that are perennial, that landscapers could use in our community, in our residential areas, so that we start getting more food growing in residential areas. I don't have enough money to afford a piece of land. I have about $18,500. Our agricultural land reserve would be able to feed about 5% of us, assuming that we need about 1.75 acres of land to feed a person in the CRD. And that's why I think it's important to start growing food not only on farms, but around our homes. For my business plan, it's important for me to find a piece of land that I can attain within my financial means. And so I want agricultural land to stay in the agricultural land reserve as long as possible. And it makes me happy when the value of that land goes down, because it looks more affordable to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jill Dalton. I live at 477 Superior Street in Victoria. I've been farming in Central Saanich for the last 2 years with Saanich Organics, and I'd like to read a letter from Robin Tuniclip, owner of Saanich Organics. Dear North Saanich Council, I am writing to express my wholehearted support for the Sandown Racetrack Community Farm proposal. I am a farmer in Saanich who has been leasing land for the past 14 years. I have a viable small farm and a vibrant vegetable marketing business called Saanich Organics. One of my main challenges with farming is secure access to a big enough parcel for my intensive vegetable production. I currently have 2 great landlords, but I'm only able to work 3/4 of an acre at each site. Working 2 separate parcels that are 20 minutes apart and renting accommodation at a 3rd location is logistically challenging, but it's a choice I make because secure and affordable land is so rare. I would benefit from access to long-term tenure on municipal land. I have mentored dozens of beginning farmers, and I'm discouraged by how few options there are on our peninsula because land is so expensive. We lose these new farmers to other parts of Canada because they rightly see no future for themselves here. Farms on the peninsula contribute to our rural economy and character. They build our culinary tourism sector, and they fortify us against changes in our food system that may lead to higher prices and shortages. I think it would be short-sighted for Council not to use this opportunity to rebuild its agricultural sector. A move of support would be a tremendous boost for local farmers and would draw industrious, young, and experienced farmers to the region. The Sandown Racetrack Community Farm could be a source of pride for the whole district. I sincerely hope that the Council would consider this proposal. Sincerely, Robin Tuniclip. I'd just like to say that I wholeheartedly agree with what Robin has said. I'm one of the many farmers that she has mentored over her years as a farmer, and I've seen many other farm apprentices leave to go to other places in Canada, Ontario, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, where there are opportunities for young farmers to build a thriving business with long-term leases. I think that long-term leases of farmland are the way that we would get young farmers to be able to have an opportunity to build a thriving business. And I would like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Laura Roberts. I live at 1179 Northern Cross Road in Central Saanich, and I'm the principal business owner of the environmental monitoring company here in Saanich. I strongly support the Sandown Racetrack Community Farm Development proposal, and I question the prudence of those who oppose this plan, as well as the veracity of statements made in opposition to this community farm plan. In my view, those on council who have publicly stated that they are in opposition to this plan have neither provided adequate reasons for their opposition, nor have they provided any viable alternative. There simply appears to be no reasonable case for having this land revert to 8 residential lots, either from a financial or business perspective, or from an agricultural, economics, and food security perspective. Reading through the district staff report, it's very clear to me that due diligence has been completed, and the benefits of completion of this project, both to the district and to the region, are manifold. I ask those opposing this plan to please reconsider your position. The future food security of the region and the island simply shouldn't be put at stake because of opposition for what appears to be opposition's sake. I urge council to please pass this important proposal. Our community and our region cannot afford to lose such an important opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Go ahead.
My name's Tessa Helwig Larson, and I live at 1661 Earl Street. I heard that there was a question of whether or not there are young farmers that would want to grow on this land. And I came forth because I'm part of a community of people who live within Victoria who would like to be able to grow food, yet there is a lack of affordable land here in this region. People are educated because there's University of Victoria, UVic, along with UBC, the Compass Education Center, the Soils Internship, which teaches people about how to grow food. There's woofing, there's many different. Yet there isn't, once people know how to grow food, there isn't affordable land, which is for people of our generation who can't afford it. So I do believe that the people are here to grow food as long as the land is available.
With the whole proposal, and will certainly move us along towards a path where we make a final decision.
Thank you. Mr. Buchan and Councillor Stoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for council's information on process, we would contemplate drafting a memorandum of understanding for your review and approval. It's not, first of all, the MOU is an agreement in principle, an agreement of honor. It's actually not a binding legal contract, which is a remarkable position for the commission to take. Normally they would want ironclad covenants for everything and wanting up front. And there was that discussion, I can assure you that they were talking about it, and we accepted the proposal for a memorandum of understanding instead. With respect to the notion that there could be a greater area thought out for commercial zoning, it was pretty clear during our discussions with the commission that it would be very important to put an equal amount of land back in to compensate for the land coming out of the reserve. And I don't think that we have much of any additional land that we could put back in order to make that compensation. So my thought is that would be not very fruitful ground with the land commission. We made an argument with them that this would be in terms of area, no net loss, but in terms of agriculture and net gain. To change the numbers on that and balance of that, I think that you would likely get a flat denial from the commission.
Mr. Buchan, Councillor Stoll, and Councillor McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that, all of the very large projects I've ever worked on in my former work, there are phases to them. And as I see it, this is another phase to move this very large project, courtesy of all of the staff and Mr. Randall and his family and the former council and mayor, forward. There certainly are going to be more meetings, as Councillor Daly and Councillor Brown talked about, more public consultation. But I think that you can't just stop it. You can't keep the family and all of us in sort of limbo forever. There are two decisions that, as Mayor Finnell said, that we're to make, which is to move direct staff to prepare the MOU and authorize the $9,000 municipal contribution. We're not deciding tonight really on the future uses for the property. What we're deciding tonight are the next necessary steps in the phased approach, which is going to be a phased approach. And I can't remember which councillor said, it might have been Councillor Brown or Councillor Nance, that this might be, we're going to eventually get there, but people feel we need more information. But this is to acquire a $6 million asset with significantly increased tax revenues. I mean, think of those, everybody on this council who ran for election recently, we all talked about keeping taxes low and trying to find more sources of tax revenue for North Saanich. And this is part of this deal, that there will be increased future tax revenues for the district and for the residents of the district. So, and the benefits of those taxes and the benefits of the agricultural land, whichever it might be, and what it is for future generations, which I think I can say that we are all here thinking about, not just me, but the other council members, Mayor Finnell, and all of you, plus the staff, or, we wouldn't be...
The barn area is a great thing. I think it's something the community, council, and mayor can get excited about. I'm no engineer or councillor. I looked at the whole deal from an unbiased point of view. I think it's a great deal for North Saanich to have a beautiful place on this land to work with year to year, taking away at different projects. I can understand Ted Daly and Team North Saanich taking a step back and really look at this. There's a job of people to protect and money to be challenging. This is a big deal. I'm hoping we move forward and the council is full and the mayor work together moving forward. Nobody asked me to speak. I thought it was doing my opinion over there as well as I do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hi there, my name is Greg Horn and I live at 1702 Belmont in Victoria. I was raised in southern Saskatchewan where my father and grandfather and great-grandfather are grain farmers. So I've been farming my whole life, and I've come to Victoria for university 10 years ago, and I've been here for 10 years, and now this is my home, and the Saanich Peninsula is where I want to live the rest of my life. And unfortunately, land here is just too darn expensive for me to farm here. And I return every summer to southern Saskatchewan to help my father still farm there, but my dream would be able to invest some of the money that I get out of farming in Saskatchewan to start a farm here. And as things get tougher in Saskatchewan with rising fuel prices and fertilizers and everything with conventional farming, the attractions of doing vegetable farming on a smaller scale for a local market are increasing all the time. So I just wanted to add my voice to the list of young farmers who are willing to be serious about investing and making money here in Saanich Peninsula. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Michael Maverick. I live at 1311 Queen Street in Victoria. I'm currently a farmer with Albert Community Farm, which I hope you're all aware of and familiar with, because I think it's a really interesting model that can be used in a situation like this where the land is updated. Not necessarily to take the model as it is, but there is lots of innovative ways that municipalities can work with a nonprofit or other groups to get more farmers on the land. This is my first year operating as a small business, and without the Halliburton Community Farm supporting me, I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't have been farming. So I think you should have more models like this available to the farmers. We're not asking for free land. We will, pay for access, but we are looking for affordable land. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Regular, I live on Wayne Road in Eagle Ridge. I'm saddened to say thank you to Mr. Bucket and his staff for this remarkable report, which was done very quickly. And thank you very much. I also thank Council for very carefully pushing them to get to understand this report. I think we all understand it much better. I hope that it's a deal of the past and that we will optimize its use over the coming years.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ed Johnson, and I live at 1299 Mountain Crossroad. And I represent the Farmlands Trust, which is composed of about 1,000 supporters, and our mandate is to preserve farmland and provide farm access to young farmers, which you've heard tonight. There are quite a few. And so I'm here to make an offer to the council when we reach Plan B, or Stage B, if we ever do, which I hope we will. Farmlands Trust will be willing and able to work with another committee or any committee or by ourselves to manage this property at no cost to the municipality, for as long as we wish. We have several members on our staff and technologists, and I'm myself a farmer, and so I think we're quite capable of doing this for you if you so desire. So the offer's there, and if you wish to take it, we'd like to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Lauren Underwood. I'm from Sale First Nation. I grew up on the reserve at Sale as a child. I worked in farms as a child, picking rocks out of fields to raise a bit of money for an allowance. Jeffrey's Bulb Farm, picking bulbs out of the dirt and then planting the next season, picking berries. My grandfather would also do that. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm trying to balance what's going on with the Sandown Park property with my post-secondary education to try and understand where the gap is in communication. I have nothing but the utmost respect for North Saanich Mayor. With the McTavish Road exchange, when that interchange went in, I have to remind Mr. Kimmermans from Ministry of Transportation at Sale has a vested interest in North Saanich. Many people think that the municipal boundaries apply to us as First Nations people, but many of the Supreme Court cases, precedent-setting cases, have shown that municipalities have to do their due diligence, whether it's Cowichan Valley Regional District entertaining the rezoning application and industrial zoning application for Bamberton land. That's still Saanich traditional territory. So they have to deal with us, whether it's Central Saanich, whether it's North Saanich, whether it's the Gulf Islands and Islands of Trust. We have a vested interest in what goes on. And so I studied some law in the Institute of Dispute Resolution at UVic, and we used a model out of Harvard University for dispute resolution. And a fellow wrote a book called Getting to Yes. And I just think that you folks, your staff here at North Saanich, Mayor and Council, and you've done such an awesome job to get to this point. And I think this is one of the greatest proposals I've seen come forward from developers, from families, to a municipality. And you've dealt with it in a really great way. Your staff has been very thorough. And I just want to raise up my hands to you because I think it's not just a win-win, but it's a win-win-win all the way around. So I think you've got a golden opportunity here. I hope that you can work it out amongst yourselves, however you have to do that, and come back. And the family, they've been struggling with that property for a long time. And people can put, as you see in Martindale Valley, is the same as Delta. People put up a 10,000 square foot house in the middle of farmland and call it a farm because they have a few horses or a few animals. This is a great opportunity, and I hope you can rise to the challenge And we're watching. I talked with our chief and council about it. And we're really appreciative because the startup is developing a piece of land, the Gowrie Road property next to the fairgrounds, sales moving forward, a proposal. First Nations are doing this, so we're watching you and we're going to follow your lead and how we do business across our cultures. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
My name is John Marlin. I also live in Victoria on Superior Street. Until December, I was farming on the Saanich Peninsula, Mount Newton Cross Road, and I'm returning to my engineering career because of the lack of affordable land and opportunities to make a real business go. I just want to address that I think this is a very special opportunity here for the community farm because you see a lot of smaller 1, 2, 3 acre vegetable operations, but here you have an opportunity to get bigger farms, 20 acres, 30 acres, and I think there's maybe a bit of concern about attracting younger people who aren't committed to farming, but with larger pieces of land, you're going to scare off anybody that doesn't want to really make a go of it. And you will see some really unique farming enterprises and people who've really got a lot of business wherewithal. And I want to say that there are a lot of young people who read the business section every morning and also want to farm. It's not a mutually exclusive set of people. A lot of us understand the need to make a living, to make money, to contribute to our economy, and we want to work hard to do that. So thank you for the opportunity to express those views.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Go ahead, sir.
My name is John Upper. I live in former Wilson and Monroe. I have a series of questions regarding the tax report to start with, if I may. We have a series of numbers. Strip vegetation of areas received topsoil of $50,000. Is that based on how many acres?
I'm sorry, sir, where are you in the report?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 015. On land remediation, the report specifies $50,000 to strip the area, which, if you read back up, is approximately 33 acres. The second question relates to installing topsoil of $20,000. If we're going to take 300 mil, you have to have a fluff factor. When you take it out of the bank and over the truck, you're going to need 20% more. What is the cost? Is this a cost per acre or a cost for the entire 33 acres?
Through me to you, Mr. Buchan, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I can defer this to Brian Robinson.
Chair, it is a cost for the total area. And again, there's contingency in there. Some of the costs for stripping the lands based on the thickness of the vegetation. It's not hard to quantify based on the density of it. So we took a long figure of an acre and stripping based on the equipment costs to do that.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
And for the topsoil, is that $20,000 for all 33 acres, or is that per acre?
Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, again, knowing that the topsoil is going to be delivered for free, we can expect that we will be able to distribute those loads fairly regularly over the property. And then it would just be a matter of either using a cab, grading it in to balance the rest of the topsoil. It would be like a large stockpile of material. It would be material that would be trucked and deposited on the site and then balanced off. We did a 4-acre piece in the back of the municipal hall with some airport land just this year, and so we use some of those as the land to quantify.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Well, if you can spread over 700 truckloads of material for $1,000, I don't know what's the report. That doesn't compute, I'm sorry. The other question I got, is if I read everything's on the website correctly, the owners are gifting the land to North Sandown. In exchange for this gift, they're receiving 12.5 acres of land use zone commercial. Talking to commercial realtors and taking up normal construction costs for sewer and other road improvements. It's going to net minimum $7.5 million for the Victoria market. If this gift is going in at current assessed value, that sounds to me like a $6 million gift, which I've heard quoted from certain council members. Are they getting a tax credit on top of this? That gift?
No.
Thank you. We talked about drainage. When this land is developed out, you're going to have a total surface area of about 450,000 square feet. It's totally impervious. When you have a drop of water falling, you get a drop of water running off. Where's this water going to go? Some of it will make its way across Pat Bay Highway, but it's restricted by tight capacity. The bulk of the water is going to go westward. If you look at the topography, you see the only way it can go, which creates all sorts of issues for all of us that live downstream from Sandown. The $100,000 estimate for drainage remediation really doesn't apply. We just completed the project, the engineering of it, called smaller than what's needed here. It serves a smaller area. And our cost for $225,000. It was readily road accessible. All the studies were done ahead of time, engineering, survey. I'd love to see the survey reports and engineering for this estimate. So as the effect of drainage is going to be a lot larger cost factor. The water which runs off of the development needs to be calculated. We need a technologist to do that. And then we need to deal with all the downstream benefits. Failing to do so, according to my neighbors, we're unhappy now with flooding. The increased water flows will be very unhappy. Bottom line is, I think the costs are going to be much higher. Going all kinds of reasons. You're going to need a lot more topsoil. For example, this is a simple carrot. I just grabbed it on the way up the door. Topsoil. It measures 14 inches. I don't know you can grow 14 inches of carrot in 12 inches of topsoil. As far as topsoil and property goes, I've got some test holes. There is none. The most I can find is 2 inches on the clear area. I've done enough work around the perimeter with various landowners, and they don't have topsoil either. There is none. So if you're going to have these young farmers, and I support them, they're going to need a lot more topsoil, which is going to be packed on your bottom line here.
Are you just about finished, sir? Your 3 minutes expired.
Well, we'd like to hear.
Well, just to sum it up, not to take anything posing most of the time, I can't make the numbers work. Despite the beautiful emotion of surrounding it, it doesn't make sense. This property on Mount Newton, 91.6 acres, asking price is less than $30,000 an acre, needs nothing. Here, we're looking at doing an awful lot. My suggestion, to make it work, and make it relatively cost-free to the taxpayers of North Saanich, is buy the land at assessment or at appraised value. Give them the proper appraisal on it. That's something you shouldn't have done anyways, in my book. So you know what you're dealing with. It's assessed at $6 million because it's zoned or has a capacity for exhibition control. So it's more of a business than a farm. We're proposing to turn it back to farm. That's its value. If you look at $25,000 an acre in Central Saanich, it's got to be the same here.
Could I ask you to wrap it up now, please?
Done. You can't do it. Once you buy it, price it, buy it, sell off the land yourself, use schools funds, but pay for everything else. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Buckman?
Just for clarification, the costs for drainage that have been provided to council has to do with the agricultural land, not for the commercial land. The commercial land would have to take care of all of their drainage to current discharge rates.
Thank you. I don't don't see any other speakers running into the podium, although I think I see one more. I don't know. What are the rules here? Yes, you may.
I think the best way to deal with drainage is to build soil. And I think the soil can actually be built from sun and organic matter. It doesn't have to be brought from somewhere else. Farmers who know how to build soil can make the drainage problem better on that piece of land by working on that piece of land without having a need for all of the infrastructure and costs.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
Joe Robinson, I'm the 848 Rainbow President in Saanich. I was a former resident for Saanich and also Silver. And I've got a little bit of experience with Sandown. I do have some interest in this. I've had a little bit of experience with Sandown when I was on the Economic Planning Committee in Saanich with our racetrackers proposal. The one thing that is bothering me to an extent is the fact that I sat very quietly here tonight because I don't pay taxes in North Saanich. And I think that the people that are involved in this, that are speaking to these problems, it should be restricted to the people that live here and pay taxes and are going to have to incur the costs of developing this property. It would be lovely for me to say, I'd like to come out here and have a farm, but I'm paying my taxes in Saanich. And I think priority should be given to the residents of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we come back to council now then, is that correct? Mayor Fennell?
I do have a question, and it's through you, Madam Chair, and probably to the engineer. One point that was raised by the gentleman, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I didn't get his full name, but I don't understand why the drainage would be worse after the topsoil is put on than it is now. And that was the impression I got from the statements he made. And I wonder if you can address that.
Mr. O'Reilly?
Through the chair. Yes, I think as I've acknowledged earlier, there are existing problems in the Seacombe catchment area, and I think that's what we're referring to. What I see happening here is there's an existing piece of land, it's draining in that direction. What we will be doing, the $100,000, is to drain it agriculturally, but I don't see that leading to an increase in the flow into that catchment area. Any water that's collected on that property could be collected in drains and into ponds, and it can be retained on the property.
Thank you. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one more question for you, or through you, to Mr. Buchan, and I'm prompted in part by the gentleman from the First Nations. Through you, have we consulted or have we looked at any of the archaeological maps to see what, if any, issues may arise in terms of the Sandown property?
Mr. Buchan?
I'll defer that question to Mr. O'Reilly.
Mr. O'Reilly? Sorry, Mr. O'Reilly.
Through the chair. We have examined there's a map prepared by the Provincial Heritage Branch in relation to archaeological sensitivity, and the Sandown site is not identified as one. Typically the archaeological sites of high interest are on the coast, and there is not, it hasn't been identified on the maps.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown? Sorry, Councillor Brown?
I have a further question too. And one thing that was bothering me is that we're going to amalgamate all those separate properties. My question is, why can't we just leave them as separate properties? Is that an ALC problem that they have, or is it one we decide on? Because it seems to me that if a council down the road wants to do something different with that forested area, it can carve it off and say it's forestation.
Mr. Buckley?
It's a very good question. We met with the Land Commission and several phone calls and conversations with them during the initial formulation of the proposal. What is of value to them, particularly their larger parcels, the division of farmland into smaller parcels, in their mind, diminishes the value of agricultural land. So that was done in order to make this something that was approvable in their minds.
Thank you.
Just following that, sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
But see, we can subdivide it any way we want. We've got 83 acres. There's no necessity for us to. We've heard a lot of young farmers saying 20 or 30 acres would be ideal. We can cut it up any way we want. I mean, those boundaries on a plan are not going to make any difference as to whether it's agricultural or not. It's all agricultural.
Mr. Button?
Madam Chair, I think it's particularly easy to do that if Council wanted ultimately to entertain a variety of parcel sizes by lease. Our proposal, the initial proposal, was that this ultimately be managed by somebody else that's responsible for it, so that the district wouldn't be involved. But the answer is yes. On one large parcel, you could have a number of small plots that could be leased out individually.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Councillor Burns?
Yeah, well, I listened to all the presentations here, and I definitely have some sympathy for them. I agree with a couple of speakers that said that we have to be concerned, first of all, with our own ratepayers, our own taxpayers, because they're the ones that are really going to be asked to pay up front for this thing. And that's where the thing falls out of bed with me a little bit. When we first started on this trail, there was going to be no cost to the municipality. And we're looking at now probably, I would say $1 million. And I think that's my gut feeling to fix this, to make this stuff sort of work. And even then, I think the drainage will be an ongoing problem. I think when you have severe rains, the ponds won't hold it. It will go downstream. We know downstream doesn't hold it because at the corner of John and Wilson and stuff, it floods and you can't go through those streets. So, you know, there will be problems down the road, but there's always problems. But I just have a lot of problems with if all the people that are coming from Victoria and Souk and Central Saanich and all the rest of it, if you had a way to cover us for some of these costs, then I would be more interested in listening to your arguments. But you're basically just telling us, folks, you guys paid for us. You, all the taxpayers in North Saanich, step up and pay for this repair of this land and give it to us. And that gives a lot of problems to some of our existing farmers. I mean, the early meetings that we had, the early Sandown meetings, they came. They don't come anymore. They came to one or two, and after that they gave up. But they were universally not in favor of this thing, because they basically have their land, they worked hard to get it, they have to pay their taxes, they have mortgages, they have everything else, and they don't like the idea of somebody coming in and the municipality going into the farming, social farming business, producing the land, and giving it to a bunch of people that don't live here. And that's the truth of the matter. And that's where I'm coming from.
Madam Chair, are we now moving into the time when we as councillors may say something?
Yes, and we could entertain motions too.
Can I say something? There's one.
Sorry, you can't.
Okay.
Councillor Starr?
Yes, well, good evening, everybody. We've all been to orientation. I guess that was before Christmas. It seems the time goes by way too quickly for all of us. But in our orientation, we were told by many of the people who presented that the role of councillors is to think about the future well-being of the community. And I'm not going to drone on in a political science lecture, but councillors' role is as policymakers, as thinking about the future well-being of the community as a whole, not just certain parts of the community, but the whole of the community. So if you take that sort of macro level thinking and advice to all newly elected councillors as to what their roles and responsibilities are, and I'm a taxpayer and have been for 30-something years, and I do live in North Saanich. And I think that part of my role as a new councillor and representing everybody in North Saanich is to think about that future vision of the community. And yes, there are many questions which taxpayers have and which I've had, and Councillor McBride, Councillor Mearns, Councillor Daly, all of us, and they have been, I think, well answered by staff, and I think his name was Mr. John Upworth, gave us some sort of perhaps contradictory information, financial information. But if you think about this at the macro level, in my view, the policy and future vision of the community overrides a lot of other things. And those other things being costs and the sort of what taxpayers will have to pay. And I don't think that having read all the information we have, that the cost to taxpayers will be more than what this future vision is for the community of having this kind of land. It's not very often in life that someone comes with a gift to you, whether it's as an individual, as a business, corporation, or as a corporation of the municipality of North Saanich. And I think that this is a legacy gift. It's what I would call a legacy donation. It's true that Mr. Randall and his family will receive, they will also receive good consideration for this donation, for this legacy gift. They get 12 acres of rezoned land and presumably the money that they will generate from that rezoned land. So the quid pro quo for North Saanich receiving this gift or donation, which is in my view a legacy donation, because it keeps on giving. You have the land, and there's going to be more and more push on land in the peninsula. There's only so much land here. We're not making more of it. We don't have any active volcanoes that are creating new land. So this is it. The finite land that we have is the finite land we have. And so in my view, the gift that we have, or of this land, it's not only that you have the land, but you also get the increased tax revenue. Now, as Councillor Mearns was saying, it may be a few years. I don't know, maybe 2 years before we receive some increased tax revenue. But if you think about the fact that generations from now, when we're, Councillor Brown talked about not being here in 15 years. So 15 years from now, or 30 years from now, when many of us aren't here anymore, we're here, but we're not acting in this capacity. I think the people who are here in North Saanich, taxpayers living here, renting here, farming here, will be very happy that we made what I think would be the right decision, which is to continue forward with what we're asked to tonight, which is we're not being asked to do the final thing tonight. We're being asked to proceed to fund the $9,000 for the secondary environmental investigation, and I think that we should proceed with that. And we're being asked to direct staff to prepare a draft MOU. A draft MOU is precisely that, it's a draft MOU. So I think as new councillors and old councillors, we need to work together to bring this legacy gift, which will continue to contribute to the future well-being of North Saanich. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Scott. Mr. Buchan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, and yes, the central part of, I guess one of the fundamental goals of the proposal was to protect the land for agricultural purposes and food security. But it was a very, and I think it's still valid, it was the fundamental part of the proposal is that the cost of meeting the conditions of the Land Commission is paid for by the increase of taxes. And we don't get that unless this is approved. So no impact to the current tax payers. It's only, and I would suggest that the timing that we look for, if council wants to look at this any further in the MOU, is to have it staged such that it's only paid for as that money comes in. And once it's built out, really that's every 10 years, that's $3.5 million. So it does get paid off. It would capitalize in reasonably quickly, and I think we can structure it so that it has no detrimental impact to the current taxpayers. In fact, it will have, in fairly short order, have a very beneficial impact.
Thank you. Mayor Fennell?
I'll move the recommendations that council direct staff to prepare a draft MOU for council's approval according to the recommendations in the staff report, which is of course the agricultural covenant to be held by the district of North Saanich, including local clarifications and the protection of the Randall family tree, and also proceed with jointly funding the Phase 2 environmental investigation. We haven't had much discussion on that tonight, but we did have plenty on it at the last meeting, with a maximum municipal contribution of $9,000. And I'd like to speak to that.
Please go ahead.
The importance, I think, of moving ahead on this is that it has had a great deal of public input to date, and that for us to have it halt without actually going to a public hearing, I think is unfair to the community. It's certain that the uncertain future of this property has been a concern for many years, certainly all the term that I served as mayor, and that's been true for council and residents. And there hasn't been any constructive activity there for many years. This proposal is agreed in response to this district's initiative to develop a solution that balances the interests of this community and those of the owners. It addresses the requirements of the Agricultural Land Commission and the Capital Regional District. And it does complement and enhance the principles of the agricultural land reserves and also of the regional growth strategy. In the 8-month period, as I mentioned, since the approval of the draft proposal by council in May last year, there have been 2 large public meetings to obtain community comment and input, one in June and one in October of 2011. There have been 2 well-attended Committee of the Whole meetings, one on September 12th and the other on December 12th, and we have a pretty good attendance here tonight. There's been considerable public comment and participation. Certainly the responses I've heard, and at those meetings and at the Committee of the Whole meetings, the overwhelming response of the residents has been yes to North Saanich accepting this gift. The opposition has been minimal. A number of questions, as has been stated tonight, were raised by council members during and subsequent to the December 12th meeting, and they have been addressed by staff in this report. As Mr. Buchan has just stated and has been emphasized a number of times in the discussions, the expenses for acquiring this asset will be covered by the increased tax and lease revenues, which will accrue to the district annually. There will be substantial increased tax revenues to the district as the commercially zoned section is developed. There will be immediate lease revenues to the district. And if you look, whatever the value of the total property, whether it's $2 million or $3 million or $5 million, the costs are relatively modest when compared to the value of that gift, and they can be addressed incrementally over a period of time. There is no immediate pressure to begin expenditures on the property, and there will be time to determine what expenditures are actually necessary. We don't know yet what the full expenditures will be required, but the broad spectrum of what they are has been addressed. And there will certainly be time for community consultation and recommendation for best uses. And these are just suggestions that young people have brought forward tonight. They aren't a governing order to council. As I've said before, this offer is something that comes only once. And considerable effort has been made to making it work for the owner, the municipality, the Agricultural Land Commission, and the regional community. And we've received cooperative and substantial support from the owner and from the Victoria Airport Authority. Looking at the alternative, which is mentioned on page, it's in here, the owner's alternatives. The alternative is for the owner to merely sell the property, which would mean no increased tax and lease revenues to the district, and no acquisition of this asset to the district. And it's difficult for me to understand how that can be considered as a desirable alternative as opposed to accepting this proposal. Council has, as Councillor Stock has stated, an opportunity to exhibit forethought and vision in acquiring this asset on behalf of this municipality. And in my view, it will be assessed by its actions on this proposal, both by present and future residents. And as I've stated at the beginning of this, I think it's important to move this proposal forward to public hearing to allow full participation of the community in giving their opinions on this proposal. At this stage, the steps are quite simple. To get a draft memorandum of understanding with the ALC for council to approve, and also to authorize $9,000 for the Phase 2 environmental assessment. As we stated before, we don't have to decide future uses for the property tonight. The issue tonight is to approve the next necessary steps to acquire this asset, which will provide significantly increased future tax revenues for the district and positive, certain benefits for present and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else on council wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say thank you to the audience this evening. We had a good reception. We've had people who are listening and being polite, and that is a refreshing situation. However, I also want to make these comments. Right from the beginning, before June, when we first considered this matter, and all the way through, I have been in favour of it. So for people to say that some councillors are opposed to this is totally wrong. We're not opposed to it, and I speak for myself and the rest of the people who were elected with me. However, during the course of the election, that's what we said we would do. We said there has to be some financial restraint, there has to be some fiduciary intelligence with these things. We can't simply do things that are going to impose taxes. I don't agree with the CAO who says, well, it's not necessarily the impact on the present taxpayers. There can be, but as I said right from the beginning, the devil in this thing is in the details. And what we're doing now is we're looking at the details. And you heard this evening a very a good meeting where we have asked the questions and we've been given some of the answers. I would like to move an amendment to the Mayor's motion, simply to add a third portion to say that we should now, also in addition to these two items that are there, obtain a sworn appraisal on the actual land that we will be acquiring valued as farmland. Because I think it is not fair to go out and say...
Excuse me, Councillor Brown, do you mind reading that amendment?
Oh, I had it in my head, but I'll bring it back. That we obtain a sworn appraisal of the property that we will acquire on the basis that it will be agricultural land. And I'm subject to any addition that the staff may be prepared to offer. I think that if we can look at that sworn appraisal, then we know exactly what we are acquiring. And if it comes out like I think it would, between 2 and 3 million, fine, and that may still be a good idea. And there are those amongst us in the council who think that would be a good idea. But let's get all the details. Let's find out precisely what it is. Our staff have said, we've got this report, and I do appreciate that they're under a lot of pressure when they come to these reports. However, there is no real business plan, so I'm not satisfied yet that this won't impact upon our taxpayers. They're the ones who put us here. They're the ones to whom I am responsible, and I think I speak for my colleagues here as well. So we're not against this thing. Please, you should be assured of that. Right from the beginning, we haven't been against it. Otherwise, they would have never got this far. So I'm going to move that amendment, and I guess whoever wants to talk to it.
I think that's Mayor Finley.
I'm just not clear, Councillor Brown, through you, Madam Chair, what you mean by a sworn appraisal. You mean an appraisal by a licensed appraiser, realtor appraiser? Thank you. Thank you. I have no difficulty with accepting the amendment.
Madam Chair, just to be clear, is this
Councillor Stock?
Yes. So this is an amendment to the mayor's motion, and it would be
To add part 3.
So it would be part 3. Okay, thank you.
I'd also ask
Just
the
a
mayor. Sorry, Madam Chair.
I'm just not sure. Were you finished, Councillor Stock?
Oh yes, I just wanted to make sure that we all knew, because sometimes these things go very swiftly and people aren't quite sure. Pardon me, we've had that in the past, exactly what the new motion would be, including your amendment. So I just wanted to make sure we all knew.
I'd also ask the mayor if she would be prepared to take them separately, one after the other, or from the bottom to the top, because I don't think the bottom two would have a problem. And then councillors can express their view with regard to the MOU. But before we do that, Chair, can I please ask the staff, particularly Mr. Barker, if you draft a memorandum of undertaking, and I'm not going to hold you to the headings, but what are you going to put into that memorandum of undertaking at this stage? I understand it's a draft, I understand it's going to come to us and we can say yes or no to it, but what's your intention if this is passed? What would you do?
Mr. Buckman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A memorandum of understanding, which is a little bit different from undertaking. And I just say that because I know that undertaking has legal connotations and annotations. I would contemplate that the MOU would include the clarifications that we've alluded to in the report in terms of the covenants. It would speak to the fact that we can do the improvements incrementally as the increase in taxes and other revenues permit. It's set that out specifically, yes. Basically it's about doing the storm drainage and the soil work, and we want to clarify that it's more than 5 years. We try to put some kind of rough timetable in, but have it subject to the taxes coming in. And I would say that I think that there'd be a very good possibility that the $100,000 that the owner is offering, I haven't discussed this with him, but I would think that there'd be a good chance that he would allow us to use that in any fashion for the improvements that we need. So in other words, we need to spend a fair dollar on fencing right away. So that could go towards that. And so, and that's simply saying, this is one way of achieving the goal set out, the conditions set out by the commission, without having to dip into current tax dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. On the amendment, I see no further speakers on the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? The amendment's carried. On the main motion, are there further speakers on the main motion as amended? I see no.
I think that given the explanation, there probably isn't any need to separate it.
On the main motion, those in favor? Sorry? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've still got some issues with this, and I think we've come a long way, certainly tonight, with the help of the staff report, and I too commend them for that. One issue that still really concerns me is the discussion about the public consultation after the fact. Now, you see, I see it as after the fact because I truly believe that once we have the memorandum and we've agreed to that, we've got 83 acres with all of these conditions. And I'm not sure what the point is in having a discussion with the public after the fact. What I would really prefer to see is that we had that discussion with the public prior to saying we're going to tie up 83 acres with the restrictions. So to me, that's a really big part of it because I have a lot of time, I've got a lot of sympathy for these young people who are coming forward. Trust me, I really do. But, you know, I would say to you, I'd rather see the district, if we're going to do something like this, not start out with 83 acres. I mean, I'd rather see the district say, you know, it sounds like a good notion, so as Councillor Brown suggested, why do we have to lump it all together? And maybe we can take one of the parcels and try that. Once, of course, all the other questions are asked about the dollar signs. So, you know, I guess I want to hear a little more from the CAO about what this memorandum of understanding means. But that's one issue that I've really still got trouble with because I just think it's overly ambitious and our hands are really tied and the public has not said to us, the community has not said to us, we want 83 acres in perpetuity. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the staff in their report have indicated that these are low-end estimates. They say that right in there on page 9 of the report. Under risk and mitigation, it says staff have prepared estimates for the minimum costs anticipated. And so the other thing, fellow council members, I truly believe that these are minimum dollar signs. I would be surprised at all if we ended up at well over, and I say well over $1 million. So, you know, is it really an asset? And we've added now to the proposal or to the recommendations this appraisal. And and Madam Mayor, whether you believe me or not, with respect to my comment about the opposition has been minimal, the opposition came in the form of the election. And I'm saying that with due respect. I'm saying we all went pounding on doors, we attended all candidates' meetings, and I believe that that was a true indication of how the community feels about the Sandown proposal, because I think for most of us, it was front and center, it was one of the main issues.
Excuse me, Councillor Daly, could you just address your remarks to the motion? I'm not clear whether you're for or against.
Well, if the motion is going to be all put together, I'm still not sure if I can support it. If it's divided up into the three, then certainly I'm quite likely in favor of the final of the last two. I hear what Councillor Stock said, and again, I think we're together in this. I do have, I hear these young farmers, and I would like to do something for them, but I don't want to jump in at 83 acres. So I want to remain open-minded. I'm concerned about the dollar signs. I'm concerned where the covenant's going to lead us, the restrictions are going to lead us. And I still say I'd sign this deal tomorrow if it was a straight line swap. And then we could look at this and digest it and work on the figures. But the way it's being pushed through is making me extremely uncomfortable. And at this point in time, I'm less inclined to support it based on information we still don't have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
With respect to Councillor Daly and to you, Madam Chair, the whole point of a draft memorandum of understanding is for Council to address those issues. And it does not commit Council to any more expenditure. It gives Council a clear idea of what it is that we are bringing to the public. And so I don't see the issues that Councillor Daly has raised as affecting the need to have a draft come to Council for Council to look at it.
Yes, hello. be repetitive from the meeting which we held prior to Christmas. I think that was the 12th of December, and we had a very long discussion then as well. A memorandum of understanding is a document which, especially when it's only going to be a draft one, and I think I talked about this previously, I've drafted many MOUs in my negotiations with Aboriginal people, because the very first time that you sit down at the negotiation table, you have to set out, as between the federal crown and the representatives of the Aboriginal people, what it is you're going to talk about. It doesn't mean that later on the Aboriginal people can't come back to us and say, well, you left out X. Or that because of legal decisions in the Supreme Court of Canada, our lawyers, the justice lawyers, can't come to us and say, oh, you know, you better add this little clause into the draft MOU, and maybe we shouldn't be talking about why now, you know, say 6 months or a year later. But in the beginning, you have to have something which establishes what it is you're talking about. And so for me, the draft MOU is part of it. It doesn't mean that we're committed. It doesn't mean we're committing the taxpayers. It is the beginning, a document which sets out the beginning of the discussion. And that's how I see it. And it's very important, actually, because I think it gives a better understanding for all of us of what we're talking about. And then we can use it as a draft document in a public meeting. That's what I think it should be used for. That we could then show people and say, well, here's a draft of what an MOU would look like with regard to this proposal. So that's why I think it's a very important step. It's not finalizing this whole proposal at all, but it's part of what you have to do to get things moving, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Buchan?
And just for clarification, thank you for raising the point about minimum costs, and in fact I do use that language. The point of that statement was to indicate that there could be costs following stage A. So the estimates that we provided, we're not intending to say these are minimum costs for stage A, they're just minimum costs. Council, depending on the business plan it chose for after acquisition, could have other costs. My hope is we find a third party, like for example the Farmland Trust, to take over management and ownership and responsibility, so there's no cost. So that's just a clarification on what minimum cost was intended to be. And I think that's we're slipping a bit into what stage B might look like in terms of how the land is used. Really, that's a great discussion. But the first question is, do you want the land? Is there a sufficiently net positive value in the asset, which the appraiser will help us answer? And do you want those increased taxes? To me, that really is the first question for council. After council acquires the land, if council acquires the land, it could decide to sell the land off entirely to the farmer for agricultural purposes. And if there's a net positive value, then council is ahead of the game. And I'm not advocating that. I'm simply saying, making that point to demonstrate that assume the appraisal justifies the position that this is a good business decision.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. Councillor Mearns? Councillor Brown?
Madam Chair, I take what Councillor Stark says, and the normal would be that's exactly what happens. You sit down, you put up a memorandum of understanding, and then you start negotiating. That is not how this has been done. This has been done through our staff and staff on the commission deciding negotiating off the record as to what might be acceptable to us and them, and putting that into the original proposals. And that is where we are having a problem with the memorandum of understanding. I said undertaking. It's not. It's understanding. But if you have one with the Agricultural Land Commission, you better know that that's a serious document. We don't just write them and say, okay, here's what we want. They already know. They already know what they've told us they want. And if it's not in the memorandum of understanding, the thing falls apart. So it is a critical stage right now. I tend to agree with Councillor O'Day. It's a critical stage. If we get that draft, then we have to make our decision. So that's the next step up. And that draft is going to have to incorporate what the ALC want. In my position is, let's talk to them now if we want to change it, before we give them any sort of memorandum of understanding. That's where I'm coming from.
Mayor Fiddle?
Until we have a draft, we have nothing to discuss.
Councillor McBride?
What concern, I think I'm with Mr. Brown, Councillor Brown, and Councillor Daly. What I would like to see us do is look at each individual item and vote on each individual item and then move forward from that. Vote for number 1, vote for number 2, vote for Mr. Councillor Brown's number 3. And I think if we vote on each one individually, we'll have some idea of where we're going to go. That's my comments.
Are there any further speakers on the motion?
Can we have a vote as to whether we want to vote on?
Well, if you want to split the motion, it would take a motion.
Okay, I move that we split the motion.
We deal with the motion as three items.
Yes. So let's vote on that.
Any discussion on the question of splitting the motion?
In reverse.
Those in favor of the motion to split the question? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We will now vote on the motion as presented. Those in favor of part 1? Those opposed? Part 1 fails. Those in favor of part 2? Those opposed? Motion carries. Those in favor of part 3? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, we've finished with that item. It's 9 o'clock. I'm going to ask for a 5-minute